words and I think accurate description of John Simpson. It's just so fitting, and to pick up on that same theme of what Corey had shared of the different roles that John Simpson fulfilled. And many of you identify with John in different ways, like a son or a brother, a friend, a soldier, as you shared, a husband, a father, an uncle, grandfather, father-in-law to me, and a great uncle. And then in this area, many people who came through last night know him as if you're from Anderson County, you knew him as an athlete. If you're from Lincoln County, you knew him as a coach and a referee and a bus driver. Everybody knew him as a cook in some way, form, or fashion, including the military. Some people who came through last night knew him as a plant manager. One young man came through last night and said, "This guy gave me my first job and told me that if I couldn't work for him, I couldn't work for anybody." And so he was a plant manager, farmer, buyer, seller, investor, advisor. This fine man wore a lot of hats. But as I was preparing for what to say, trying not to get choked up, because honestly we're supposed to have a great celebration time with tears and with laughter. And I was thinking about different things. Somebody asked me, said, "When have you had time really to prepare for this?" And I've actually had almost 20 years to prepare for this, even though when we met he didn't say, "I'd like for you to speak at my funeral." But we've definitely had time. Matter of fact, that was the last thing he said, because I was about to marry his daughter, so I don't think he was really, I think he was burling up his chest as you spoke, just to kind of frighten me and make sure that I was aware of what this big responsibility was. But there were some phrases that just kind of popped in my mind that kind of mark what I think describes John Simpson. And it was funny because last night I was kind of thinking, does other people know these phrases? Has other people heard these particular statements that came out of this guy's mouth on a regular basis towards me or to other people? And I just want to kind of summarize what he means to me, what he means to other people, with different phrases that actually he used and I actually heard him say quite often, and they kind of describe, I think, what kind of guy that John Simpson was. The first one's kind of funny because anytime that we're around each other as a family, we hear him saying this, and if you didn't hear him say this, then he was being too gracious to you. The phrase that we commonly joke about, "shut the door." Shut the door. Always. And it would usually be some grandkid like Courtney who would slam it really hard, and he couldn't really argue with that because she did shut the door. And this was not just with things like shutting the door. I mean, this was with just very conservative on not wasting things like energy, or even if it was water, turn that, if you're brushing your teeth, turn the water off. I mean, he was doing that long before we got into the green, energy efficient. I mean, he was doing that long before that. Wasting water, don't waste the food. If you're not going to eat that, you need to do something with it. And as I'm thinking about these phrases that kind of characterize John Simpson, I didn't realize it until I was putting this together how much those phrases and those statements and those principles that he lived by are coming right out of the Scripture. They are birthed in the Scripture. And I just want to read to you some fitting words. For example, I just got a kick out of thinking how John Simpson would have felt if he were one of the 12 disciples whenever Jesus said in John chapter 6, when they all had enough to eat at the feeding of the 5,000, what happened at the end of that particular feeding? Jesus said, "Gather the pieces that are left over and let nothing be wasted." I could see John Simpson and being one of those disciples saying, "That's what I'm talking about. Jesus, I'm glad you fed the 5,000. I'm also glad that you're not going to waste anything." I can see him being that way. It's kind of mirrored, the same thought is mirrored in Proverbs chapter 6, verses 6 through 8, which say this: "Go to the ant, you sluggard, consider its ways and be wise. It has no commander, no overseer, no ruler, yet it stores its provision in summer and gathers its food at harvest." That's conservative wisdom that's learned from the ant. And believe you me, while spending that much time at the farm, observing all kinds of things, he definitely had a handle on what you can learn from God's creation and the simplicity of even an ant that kind of mirrors his conservative wisdom. The other thing that is a phrase that was commonly used, and actually an original phrase, I think with John, unless one of you brothers have introduced him to it, but he said it all the time. It was the first time I had ever heard somebody use the phrase. He used the phrase, "Easy, big fella." Easy, big fella. Another phrase that comes to mind, I don't even know how appropriate it is to say this, but I'm the pastor here, so I'm going to say it anyway. And it's the phrase, "Talk to me, sweet lips." Now, I don't know how many of you heard him say that. Maybe he just used that in our context. I don't really know. But anyway, it just summarized his sense of humor. And I think sometimes he tried to be serious enough so that you understood, hey, there's consequences for bad behavior or popping off the mouth. But he's funny. Very funny. And it's so funny that he and I, and you can talk to me later about how inappropriate it is for a preacher to like the movie Waterboy, but John and I used to get cracked up at Waterboy, the movie. He loved football and he loved funny, and so he and I would often joke a little bit. May have even done it on the Liberty Bowl trip to Memphis. I don't even know. I could hear John saying something about, "Foosball ain't the devil, mama." Something of that nature. But so much fun, funny times. We would watch Major League Baseball, funny movie. But one of the things that we did enjoy doing together, just that kind of drives home the sense of humor that he had, was oftentimes we'd watch this old Saturday Night Live characters in movies like Bill Murray, Steve Martin, Dan Aykroyd, Chevy Chase. We liked all of those things. But you know, even a sense of humor is being birthed out of the Scriptures. Even ability to laugh and enjoy life is coming out of the Scriptures. But let me just read a couple of them to you, and I think that this would reflect what we saw in John Simpson. Proverbs chapter 15, verse 13 says, "A happy heart makes the face cheerful, but heartache crushes the spirit." Proverbs chapter 17, verse 22, I believe reflects him well when it says, "A cheerful heart is a good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones." The next phrase that kind of characterized John Simpson, and I could probably say the first two words, and you could complete the last two words when John Simpson would say, "Work smarter." Anybody hear him say that? Work smarter, not harder. First time he really drove that home to me, we were pulling shrubs out of our first house that we owned, and I was trying to dig them out. He pulls up with a four-wheel drive. I think it was from Vic West Steel, and he probably shouldn't have been using equipment that inappropriately from Vic West Steel. But what are you going to do about it now, Vic West Steel? But anyway, he pulls up the four-wheel drive, hooks the chains to it. He is just jolting them out, and that was kind of a picture for him of work smarter. We're not digging it. The truck is working for us. Work smarter, not harder. This just screams of his innovative quality instead of quantity, just using his skull, using the brain God had given him. And listen to these proverbs and scriptures from Ecclesiastes and see if they don't describe John Simpson. Listen to this one. Proverbs chapter 12, verse 11 says, "He who works his land will have abundant food, but he who chases fantasies lacks judgment." That sounds just like John Simpson. Ecclesiastes 10, verse 10, on this theme of working smarter, not harder. Listen to the scriptures birth that idea to life. When it says, "If the axe is dull and its edge is unsharpened, more strength is needed, but skill will bring success." You see, I didn't know when John Simpson was saying, "Work smarter, not harder," that it was basically coming right out of Ecclesiastes 10. Look, Dodo, a.k.a. son-in-law, Sharpen the axe, and you won't have to swing it so many times. Work smarter, not harder. That's good